PTDF, this value skyrocketed. So that is why there is a huge difference in, for example, in Czech Republic, while in the other countries we had more or less negative values. So in Austria there was like a small positive value, and again better value after NRAO. In Croatia, there is a small difference, but everything else, actually, NRAO started from the negative point. So most of the time, NRAO in these countries in month of December started with already pre-congested grids. So RAMs were already negative. Again, in case of Hungary and Slovenia, values do not exist because there were no most limiting elements in this in these countries. If there are no questions, of course, I'm open to any question, any discussion bilaterally. So feel free to write me email if you have any questions regarding it.
Sorry, I was muted. Yeah, yeah, Anna, thank you very much. Indeed, if there are any questions or remarks, obviously they could also be forwarded in the Q&A, of course. So, okay.
Maybe one quick question here. I've understood that there was two optimizer for this NRAO in the two RSCs.
Yes.
So all the stats you presented is the combined result of those two optimizer, or is just one of the two? And
yeah, in December we still had only one. It was TSNet NRAO.
I see.
So, yeah, but from February on, you will already see combined impact.
Okay, and this is has this changed significantly, the addition of this new optimizer, or the picture remain broadly the same as what you're
Picture
presenting?
will be maybe a bit better in sense of availability of NRAO, so those 5% of the time when NRAO didn't work, but more or less I think remained the same. Yeah.
Like for, especially for the period where the NRAO doesn't find anything, that would remain more or less the same.
I honestly didn't see this one for February, but yeah, it can happen that that number also increased. But what is most important is that NRAO worked entire month of February. So either both or at least one was available to provide any kind of result.
I see. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Anna. Yeah, let's go to a next subject, and that's a subject where we want to discuss something and get your views on. So, Steve, could you give us some input on the spikes for core?
Yeah, I'll keep it very brief, given that we're already over time. So just an introduction on this topic to give you some food for thought, and in a later moment then come back to us with reactions, I would say. So for those that are following CWE, they know about the spike process. So it's a way that we use to calculate what is the impact of changes in the grid on the resulting capacities coming out of the capacity calculation. It was introduced years ago, before we were speaking about 70% implementation, for we speaking about virtual capacities, local validations, etc. And that is mainly the pivotal point here in the message, that we now are in a different world, and that we are looking into, is it still useful to do a spike in core? And if we do it, what is the most effective way to do it? As core TSOs, we believe that we have to redesign this approach in order to be meaningful, because we are not running the same process anymore as 5 years ago, and we do want to take into account the wide reference. So with the steps of virtual capacity, with the steps of local validation, the NRAO, as you have seen, and also acknowledge that there can be interdependencies between different grid evolutions taking place at the same time. So our line of thinking is the following. It's still a line of thinking. We haven't finally decided. It's open for your feedback. Instead of continuing with many spikes, not so representative, move to an approach where we would group grid evolutions together, assessing their impact on capacities, but then doing it the right way and running the full capacity calculation process on a set of representative days. So we can think, for example, of having 2 spikes a year, where we group for each spike the major grid evolutions of the coming 6 months. That's our direction of thinking, as I said. So
yeah, are there any maybe first thoughts about this? I don't think we can, widely discuss it now, but it would be good if somebody feels a first idea coming up.
I mean, I can speak. I mean, we've been asking for many years to have seasonal information. So, for example, we are setting yearly capacities, and when you've got evolution, they can be methodological or from the grid perspective. Until now, we can only rely on the past, and we have very, very limited past. So ideally for the market, before the yearly capacity, it would be good to have a spike or a representative version of the grid.
But that's then, Eric, not related directly to a change. Is that right? Or what you're proposing?
It's not directly related to the change, but we know that change, they occur. So after 1 year, you can imagine that the grid has evolved, that the methods, they have evolved, and that the history that we are looking at is not necessarily relevant for the future. So we understand that it's difficult for you to perform every month. You're not going to perform a spike, but on probably maybe ahead of the winter season, it's a bit like you have seasonal studies where you look at the security of the system. And so this is a time when you exchange information on the grid. So if you are already making the effort to have this data, maybe that could be made available in the form of a spike.
There's a direction indeed we are going into. So this example of 2 spikes, we can time fit them to the seasons, to what makes most sense. But I get from your reaction that you support this line of thinking, to have a few representative spikes a year that look X months ahead. When you do 2 spikes, would then look 6 months ahead.
It's more important for us to have a spike that is relevant rather than having multiple non-coordinated effects that we can't really use.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's good to hear.
Jerome, do you want to?
No, I think just to support Eric's comments, I think it's a good direction of travel. Also, like the actual effect of each individual network change or regulatory change, methodological change, etc., is not necessarily what really interests us. So having an overall perspective on changes at regular intervals could be a right way to go.
Benjamin, do you want to add something?
No, lower my end. Thanks.
Maybe one point on my side. I think I also go in the same direction, but I think 6 months would be too not enough. I think we would need at least 1 year and a half. I think or a bit more perspective in what is going to happen. I mean, financially all those contracts already trade for next year, right? So for 2023. So I think yeah, 6 months would be too small of a perspective. And already even if there is no very complex calculation that are done here, but already having a perspective of all the change on the grid and the methodology we can expect for 2023, for example, as of today, would be useful for us, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I want to point out, so these spikes come on top of post-go-live studies. So if they're in these post-go-live studies, there are methodological changes, and then these are also evaluated separately. So I think here we need to find a bit the balance on how much foresight we can include into the exercise. Open to discuss, for example, that we look 1 year ahead and then repeat the exercise either every year or every 6 months. But also want to manage expectations that this spike will be a spike and not replace all other studies when it comes down to methodological changes as well. So we mainly focus here with the spike on the grid evolutions. But for example, assessing the efficiency of the NRAO, that will be a separate study that will go into the annual report.
So for example, if we take the example of the mean RAM increase based on the agreed linear trajectory, you consider that this is not the impact this will have in 2023, for example, as of today, it is not relevant for the scope of a spike.
If you would do a spike, let's say end 2022, we do a spike looking at the next 6 months, and of course the values of the action plans of 2023 would be applied. So the hypothesis will be synchronized. Yeah.
So it will be taken into account. It would give a broad overview of the year ahead.
Yeah. So the hypothesis indeed will evolve depending on the year that we look. I think you picked out the example that is always included when we perform then a study. Then.
Okay, thank you very much, Steve. Regarding the next topic on the agenda, which is intraday, we decided to skip that and see that as for information for now. It was basically updating about the planning and about the consultation of the second amendment. I will discuss together with Helene whether we have to put it on the agenda another time or whether we can just leave it for information. And then I would like to go to the long-term capacity calculation topic, where we also have a question to you as market participants. This is stemming from the ESA workshop, but I think Bert, you are going to go through this. Is that right? Or Jean? Then I will do it. It's in January we had a workshop organized by Acer on long-term capacity calculation and long-term allocation. The point there is that we promised to take the voices of the market into account in developing further on this. Maybe now for information, we included the KPIs we use for day ahead at the moment, and it would be good if we could arrange for a way of working, maybe with some volunteers from your side, to dig into these KPIs and come up with a proposal to be discussed again in a next CCG. So my request for that is maybe Jérôme, I have to address it to you. How can we arrange for that?
Thanks, Ruud. Yeah, I'm stepping in because Elena had to go. I'm happy to relay the message among market participants and different associations and stuff like this, both to get a coalition of the willing on this one, and also help out with sorting out KPIs that are relevant for the market. So definitely, I can take the action and get back to you in the coming weeks.
Very good. Thank you very much, Jérôme. Let's be in contact on that and then proceed. Okay, then we go to the any other business part of the agenda. Last week there was a webinar actually focused on the procedural side of the go live. I think it was quite well received, although we got feedback that on missing topics, and they were mainly related to capacity calculation and publication of data. And that triggered us because we had a first workshop in November, of course, on these topics, whether we would need a second workshop or webinar on that topic. So we would be glad to also be in contact with you about that, whether it would make sense and what and if yes, what kind of format and timing would be appropriate. Regardless that, please be aware that all the information from these webinars will be published on the ENTSO-E website, both the recording and the slides. But Jérôme, here again, shall we also be in contact for that?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, then the last part of this consultative group, a next meeting, possibly a physical meeting, if that is allowed again. Would that be useful before the summer after go live, or would you prefer maybe after the summer?
I would say since we're only late March, something before the summer would probably be useful.
Okay, I'll liaise with you and Helene on that then to organize this further. Yeah, and then I want to remind you of the communication channels we have. So we have this group, of course. We have the ENTSO-E website and newsletter and the Q&A forum. Maybe to close off this meeting, we are at the brink of a major step in Europe, in European market integration. This is always a way for something we know. The main message from a TSO side is that we are technically ready, but it will not be perfect. And this is what we can transmit now. We have dug into the details of that today. So the decision will be made in the next week, I suppose, 7 days, and then there will be clarity. Jérôme, do you want to?
Yeah, maybe coming back to everything that was discussed today, and what you just said. For us, I think coming back to the presentation we made early in the meeting today, there's a difference between things are not perfect and things are widely unknown. So there's a real concern on our side. The concern is, of course, exacerbated by the fact that prices are not at 40 euros a megawatt hour like last year, but rather at 300. and we see that we still have problems in their heads, that we're not sure about the welfare gains, even on the hours where we exclude those problems, and that we don't have basic standards, and like kind of stop indicators, and that with these risks in their heads, we're also facing risks of no intraday capacities in 50, maybe 70% of the hours, this kind of thing. So we hear you about the improvements that you're making probably every day on day ahead and intraday, these kind of things. But we don't know how this will reduce risks, or by when. So for me, like, and I speak for myself, but probably like also for many market participants, there's really the question, what are we trying to do here? Are we just trying to tick a box? Are we tailoring what we expect in terms of process performance, of regulatory standards, etc., to make sure we meet a deadline? Or are we trying to improve markets in a time where this is highly needed? So I would say we need to proceed with caution and be sure about what we're doing. And we'll be in touch with both TSOs and NRAs in the coming days, because I think the discussion cannot stop now.
No. Fair enough, Jerome. Then
Sorry, just to mention that, yeah, I support what Jerome from Leaf Trading, so I support what Jerome has just said.
Thank you, Jerome. Yeah, I think that's what it is for the moment. Thank you very much for being here today with a big number of people. Like I said, there's a big decision ahead of us in the coming days. So thank you very much for exchanging.
And thank
Goodbye.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Have a good day.
Thank you. Goodbye, Ruud.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye. Goodbye.